Hello. I just want to do a quick mic check because last time I did a stream, I realized at the end there was no audio. Anyway, welcome to I think it's my fourth live stream. I've been trying to do a consistent stream every week just so I can just keep my channel alive, but also really just as an avenue to share just things that have helped me along the way in my own personal development journey, but also uh, just um, just an outlet for me to share what I know as well. As my close friends will tell you, I really love to share things that I love. I love learning. So yeah, that's where I decided I'm just going to try and keep this up. So today's topic is about how to stay motivated uh, at your work. So I wanted to start off with a little bit of an introduction about myself. So I guess generally staying motivated at work is a challenge, especially in the current world that we're in with when there's just so many distractions. It's even more challenging though when you work for yourself. So I've been self-employed almost full-time since 2020, but full-time probably since like 2021. So I've really had to experiment and learn along the way what actually works to help me stay consistent with working, especially when I don't really have anyone like checking up on me and seeing where I'm at with all my different projects. But I've been working on side hustles, and I guess I've been really motivated to be a business owner and an entrepreneur a lot earlier than that. I'd probably say maybe since 2009, perhaps. That's when I've really just been experimenting, like with publishing my own books and just doing honestly a lot of things because I suffer from shiny object syndrome, which might be a topic for another day. So what I wanted to share in this particular video is some of those strategies that I've experimented with along the way. So some have worked for me for a short period of time, and then there are others where it's worked for a lot longer. And there are some things that I do till today because it consistently helps me stay motivated. Because motivation is something that is, I guess, a bit like a wave. It goes up, it goes down. And so some of these things help me keep that wave in the up sort of, you know, uh, peak, etc. So yeah, so I wanted to go through a little bit about that. So firstly, there's a few things that I've learned when it comes to motivation, and often motivation is, I guess, low when our mind feels like the task at hand is just too big. So the key to overcoming that, if that's what you're facing. So, for example, let's say you've got a really big report to work on at work, or in my case, let's say I want to write a novel, which I have done and still in a draft, still needs a lot of work, but actually tackling something that feels very, I guess, overwhelming, that often is why we feel unmotivated, because we're just like, it's just too hard. So some of the strategies that I learned to overcome that is, how can you make that task feel smaller? Or how can you tackle the task in a piecemeal way? So a few things you can do is you can break up the task into smaller baby steps. So, for example, doing a mind map. So, if you're like a very visual person, if not, doing like a list. So, basically, just brainstorming what are all the subtasks that allow me to achieve this bigger task, and then just focusing on the very next one, and one, or even focusing on the easiest one. So, in the case of, for example, writing a novel, it's a big task. But planning the novel, so before actually writing, I like to plan. And so with planning, it could involve just doing a mind map. It could be a mind map of just the character. So that's breaking it down into something a bit smaller. It could be even smaller still of just a mind map about, one pivotal point in the character's life, for example. So you start with that massive task, writing a novel, and you're slowly breaking it down into the smaller things, and then you're only focusing on that tiny one little thing that needs to be done. However, actually doing it can still be challenging, especially if you maybe aren't used to working consistently. You're easily distracted. This is certainly the case when you're working for yourself. You've got no boss looking over your shoulder, making sure you're on task. So yeah, when you're on your own, if you don't feel like working, you may not work, and that could be weeks, that could be months. So one of the things that I learned, and I'm going to do a quick screen share actually to go through this in a little bit more detail, is it's something called the I believe I'm going to butcher how to pronounce this, the Pareto's principle. Pareto's principle. And it is about doing tasks in small chunks of time. Actually, no, sorry, it's the Pomodoro principle. So let me do a share of my screen. Okay, so there's something called the Pomodoro principle, and it's essentially about how our mind, in terms of that attention span, our attention span really doesn't exceed probably around the 25-minute mark if we're really trying to focus on doing a particular bigger task. It's probably shorter these days because of just all the short videos that we're used to. But I guess if you're really trying to tackle something bigger and you're in a flow, then it's around the 25-minute mark where your brain starts to be like, okay, I need a break. In other words, like we can, I guess, only concentrate so long before the time we spend actually turns out to be very inefficient. So you might be sitting there for an additional 25 minutes after that initial 25, but you may not actually be working. You might just be staring at the screen. Your brain's just a bit brain dead. And so what does it mean in terms of this 25-minute Pomodoro I guess, strategy or technique when it comes to working and tackling a bigger task, or actually just getting motivated to start a task? What you actually do is you set a 25-minute timer. So a timer these days is so accessible, pretty much on your phone. You probably have a timer app built in. If not, it's so easy to find one. But essentially what you do is, you have the intention of what is the task that I want to work on. And then you set the timer, and just for 25 minutes, you work on the task. And then when the timer goes off, you stop, you stand up, you stretch, you go have a good drink of water. So you just give your mind a little bit of a mental break. And then after maybe a couple of minutes, you go back to the computer or whatever you're working on, set another 25-minute timer, and then you resume your task. So I've experimented with different time amounts. And I guess the one I like is 15. So you don't necessarily have to follow the rules strictly of going 25, although apparently 25 is based on studies and, like it's supposed to be the sort of ideal time. But what I find I tend to do is I tend to do a 15-minute timer. And if I feel like I'm really, really into the task, then I'll repeat the timer without getting up. So what I find is helpful with this strategy is that it just gets the ball rolling. Because if you think to yourself, okay, I need to spend 2 hours on this report, you just can't be bothered doing it. Like, it just feels so overwhelming and exhausting just even thinking about it. But if you actually tell yourself, you know what, I'm only going to work for 15 minutes. I mean, 15 minutes, that's not even like an episode of a, sitcom, for example. So it feels like such a short time. And so it helps your brain overcome that mental hurdle of this is just too hard. And it just helps you get started. And what's cool is once you start and your brain juices are flowing, often you don't want to stop. So that's what I've discovered. Like, I'll set the 15-minute timer and I find myself working for an hour without feeling like I want to leave my desk yet. Because it's almost like I've tricked my brain into thinking I'm only going to work for 15 minutes. And that's actually not such a massive deal as I initially thought. But once I began, it doesn't actually feel as hard as I built it up in my mind. And I'm working like an hour and I'm doing more than I thought I could do. In fact, that's actually how I managed to achieve writing a novel in 30 days. I joined this National Novel Writing Month back in 2017 and wrote a 50,000 word novel in 30 days. Very first draft though, but I used that technique of I set 15-minute timers. And honestly, I was able to do solid writing work for, I'd say, like more than 4 hours a day, and I wouldn't feel tired. So that's what's really cool about this technique is because I didn't just sit for hours and hours. I actually would go 15-minute timer, and if I was really into the writing, then I would just keep going, and I might repeat the timer, once or twice. And then when I feel like my brain's like needing a break, I'll stop, get up, drink of water, just go for a quick walk, just literally one lap or something, depending where I am. And then I would go back and continue, and I wouldn't feel exhausted versus the times when I tried to write for a whole hour, just 2 hours nonstop, just staring at the screen. I'd feel so exhausted. So it's definitely something I highly recommend trying. And again, if you find that 15 minutes is still too long, like maybe there's a particular project, so it's maybe not work related, maybe it's like a personal project that you really find super hard to motivate yourself to do. So just keep adjusting the time, because remember, the idea is you want to trick your brain into feeling like this is actually easy. So let me do this easy, small slot of work, and then I'll take a break. So for example, I'll be honest, I experienced that. Like, there was a period where I just hadn't done some work for a while, and I was really struggling to just get any kind of work done. And 15 minutes of work even felt hard because I was used to doing no work. And so what I did was I made it a 5-minute timer, literally, because I was like, okay, 5 minutes, like, come on, 5 minutes. That's how long it takes to, have a meal. Like, it really is not a long time. And so the 5 minutes turned into 15 very easily and longer. But again, it's just getting that ball rolling, which is the hardest part when it comes to getting motivated and staying motivated to do something. But yeah, so that is the Pomodoro technique that I definitely recommend trying out and experimenting with different times to find your sweet spot. Because I know with mine it's 15, because 25 feels long for me, although I generally end up working probably about that amount of time. But yeah, so that is the second thing that I've done along my journey of trying to stay motivated when it comes to working on a task. So the third thing is something that helps me, I guess, really connect with the importance of a task, but also decide what is important out of a whole range of tasks. And it's something that I call a mind dump. So it's a bit like, people talk about how, you have your morning dump, just get all that crap out of your body. Excuse my French. So for me, a mind dump is essentially about getting whatever is on my mind off just through the process of journaling. So I guess, I've done journaling before. There's another thing that I learned about called morning pages, but I found that challenging because you have to write 3 A4 pages every day. I think it was 3. And sometimes I felt like writing more, sometimes I felt like writing less. So like I didn't really like, I guess, the sort of rules around it. So I kind of tweaked it to be what I do now, which is a mind dump. So essentially, a mind dump is you just find your writing sort of tool. So like I have an iPad, so I actually write with my Apple Pencil on like a digital journal, but you can do it in a physical journal. If you prefer typing, you can do it just as a digital, like a Word doc, etc. But essentially, what you're doing is you are just simply offloading what's on your mind. There's no rules, no one's going to read it. It's just literally, I'm thankful for this. I'm troubled about this. I want to work on this. I'm trying to work out what's really important. These are all the things I need to do. So journaling isn't for everyone, but I guess I wanted to highlight more what journaling does for me. And maybe there's another tool that you can use that gives you the same result. So journaling for me helps me get out of my mind everything that's in my head that's just a mess and swimming around. And then what it allows me then to do is just see it in front of me and just ultimately just get clarity, but also it helps me reinforce the importance of something that actually then keeps that in my mind. And then I literally feel motivated to work on it. So for example, it's happened many times actually, which is why a mind dump is probably the one consistent thing I've actually been doing for many, many years now. But sometimes, because I work on a number of projects, I'm just one of those people where I'll just get bored if I just do one thing. So at any given point in time, I have to assess what's more important. And so that's where the mind dump is super helpful. Because if I don't do the mind dump, I'll just look at my list and be like, okay, I need to check my emails. I need to do my admin. I need to, do social media posts. So I'm just sort of working in the business rather than on the business. I'm just doing the day-to-day versus thinking about the bigger picture and my goals, and thus what is actually going to move the needle, what is actually going to get me to my goals a lot faster and easier, which I don't know if you've seen one of my first streams, which is about discussing how we can ask better quality questions to change our lives. So I'll link to that actually in the description, but it's sort of tying in a little bit to that. But yeah, so again, summary, the purpose of the mind dump is to just offload what's on my mind so I can sort of see it more clearer before me and then make decisions about what's important, but also feel reinforced about the importance of something, which then feeds that internal motivation to work on it. So let's say you are not really much into writing, but maybe dictation could be a way you could do it. So maybe you could use a little like a voice memo on an iPhone or similar app, like a voice recorder, and literally just dictate what's going on in your mind and just waffle, 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 and then listen back to it. And maybe that will be what will give you that clarity and that feeling of importance of this is why I need to work on this over something else. Maybe if you're a bit more visual, maybe it might be doing a mind map or even like just sketching. I definitely remember I have some friends who are a bit more sort of artsy compared to me, and they really like just sketching, and that sometimes helps them get clarity on things. So maybe just sketching out your thoughts and ideas, and maybe that will actually help you, I guess, hone in on the direction you want to take, or ultimately like staying motivated on a particular task. But yeah, so there are three things that I guess are the most sort of key things that have helped me immensely with staying motivated to do my work, and also just yeah, I've lost my train of thought. It's a bit too close to lunch. But yeah, so just to sum up, so the three things again of how to sort of stay motivated is, firstly, if it's a really big task, break down the task into smaller bite-sized pieces through various tools and methods that work for you. Secondly, is to consider the Pomodoro technique. I think I did say that correct. Pomodoro. Yep. Pomodoro technique, where you're setting a timer, where you're telling yourself, I'm only going to work for that amount of time and then I'm going to take a break, and then playing around with that time to see what works for you. And lastly, using some kind of a tool like a mind dump or mind mapping or audio recording as a way for you to offload what's on your mind, because that's often why you feel unmotivated to do something, is the task at hand just feels too overwhelming. So by mind dumping it, even if it's like through like a visual sort of sketch, it just gives you a bit more sort of clarity. It clears your mind. It makes it feel much less overwhelming. But yeah, other than that, thank you for listening. And yeah, until next time, where I'll be discussing another topic, whatever happens to come to my mind that week. Thank you.